The moment my stepson's words left his mouth, every sound in the backyard disappeared. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks hovered above paper plates. Even the children chasing each other across the lawn stopped to stare. My husband looked as though all the blood had drained from his face, leaving him pale enough to collapse beside the buffet table. Dylan stood confidently beneath the string lights, one hand wrapped around his fiancée Emily's fingers. Then he smiled at me. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had waited years for the perfect chance to wound another person. "Let's be honest," he announced loudly enough for all 40 guests to hear. "Heather will never be half the woman my mum was." A few nervous laughs escaped before silence swallowed them. Emily's expression froze. My husband, Stephen, opened his mouth to speak, but, as always, no words came. He never defended me, not when it mattered. "My name is Heather King. I'm 45 years old, and for 12 years I quietly gave everything I had to a family that never truly accepted me." That barbecue wasn't the beginning of my story. It was simply the day the truth finally demanded to be heard. The engagement party had been my idea from the start. I spent days planning every detail because Emily deserved something beautiful. I ordered smoked brisket from the best butcher in town, decorated the backyard with white flowers, and even tracked down a lemon cake after remembering Emily once mentioned it was her favorite dessert months earlier. Nobody asked me to do those things. I simply believed that's what family did. Stephen kept telling me I worried too much, but we both knew the truth. If I didn't organize everything, nobody else would. That had been our marriage from the beginning. I met Stephen 3 years after his wife, Diane, lost her battle with ovarian cancer. Dylan was only 11 then, carrying the quiet sadness of a boy who had learned grief far too early. I never tried to replace his mother. Her photographs remained on our hallway walls because they belonged there. I never asked Dylan to call me Mom. I only tried to become someone he could depend on. Lunches appeared every morning. Clean uniforms waited every Sunday night. I never missed a basketball game, graduation ceremony, or doctor's appointment. If he needed someone, I was there, whether he noticed or not. What Dylan never knew, and what almost no one else knew, was how much of his life had been built on sacrifices no one ever mentioned. Stephen earned an honest living, but after Diane's illness he was drowning in debt. Medical bills, mortgage payments, credit cards. Everything seemed to arrive at once. I entered the marriage with something different. An inheritance carefully invested by my parents and a consulting career that paid more than enough. I never made Stephen feel smaller because of it. Instead, I quietly became the safety net beneath our family. When Dylan earned admission to a prestigious private academy, Stephen spent nights staring at tuition figures he couldn't possibly afford. Without saying much, I paid every semester. Stephen promised he'd explain someday. He never did. When Dylan needed emergency dental surgery during college, I transferred the money before the hospital called again. Stephen thanked me in private. Dylan thanked his father. When Dylan's laptop died 2 weeks before final exams, a new one appeared on his doorstep the next morning. He believed Stephen had somehow found the money. I let him believe it. When thousands of dollars in credit card debt threatened Dylan's future after graduation, I quietly erased every dollar through an account only my attorney and Stephen knew existed. Again, Stephen whispered, "I'll tell him someday." Someday never came. Instead, 12 years passed, while Dylan slowly convinced himself I was nothing more than the woman who had taken his mother's place. And Stephen let him believe it. Standing there at that barbecue, hearing my stepson tell everyone I would never compare to his mother, something inside me became strangely calm. I placed my napkin beside my plate and looked first at Dylan, then at my husband. "Good," I said softly. "Then from this moment on, your father can take care of everything." Neither Dylan nor the guests understood what I meant, but Stephen did. I watched fear settle into his eyes, because he knew exactly what I was about to stop carrying. I didn't drive home after leaving the engagement party. Instead, I drove across town to the office of Margaret Collins, the attorney who had managed my finances for nearly 15 years. Her office was dark, but she had once given me a spare key, telling me that some decisions couldn't wait until Monday morning. That night, I finally understood what she meant. Sitting alone in the quiet office, I stared at the folder labeled HK Family Trust. Inside was 12 years of invisible love. Private school tuition, medical bills, car insurance, emergency dental surgery, college housing deposits, a replacement laptop before Dylan's final exams, even the money that had saved Stephen's failed business from bankruptcy. Every sacrifice was documented. Every check carried my signature, and every payment had been made without expecting recognition. For years, Stephen had promised me the same thing. I'll tell Dylan when the time is right. But the right time never came. Instead, he allowed his son to believe that every opportunity, every rescue, every answered prayer had come from him. I had never wanted applause. I only wanted honesty. That night, I signed a single document. Margaret didn't question my decision. She simply nodded as I instructed her to close every automatic transfer connected to Dylan and Stephen. The safety net I had quietly held beneath their lives for 12 years would disappear in 2 weeks. For the first time since our marriage began, they would have to stand on their own. The changes didn't happen overnight. They arrived quietly. First came a missed student loan payment. Then Dylan's car insurance expired because the premium had never been renewed. A week later, his health insurance reimbursement failed. Each problem seemed unrelated. Each one forced Stephen into another desperate explanation. "It's probably a banking mistake," he kept saying. But the excuses were becoming harder to believe. I watched him drain his savings, sell investments, and borrow money from co-workers, all while refusing to admit the truth. Even now, he still couldn't bring himself to say my name. Then someone unexpected began asking questions. Emily. Unlike Dylan, she noticed details. She noticed Stephen's growing anxiety. She noticed the mysterious financial problems appearing one after another. One evening, while helping Stephen organize old tax records, she discovered a recurring name on years of bank statements. HK Family Holdings. The initials appeared everywhere. Tuition payments, mortgage assistance, medical expenses, business loans. Curious, she began tracing the records. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. Every financial crisis that family had survived over the last decade had one thing in common: me. A few days later, Emily knocked on my front door. She looked nervous. "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "Did you really pay for all of it?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to my study and returned carrying a thick binder Margaret and I had prepared years earlier. Every receipt, every transfer, every cancelled check, every promise I'd kept. Without a word, I placed it on the table. Emily spent nearly an hour turning the pages. Halfway through, tears blurred her vision. "He never knew," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. And Stephen?" "He knew every single payment." She closed the binder slowly. "So, he let Dylan hate you?" The question hurt because it wasn't really a question. "It was easier," I replied softly, "than risking the image Dylan had of his father." Emily sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she looked at me with tears still shining in her eyes. "You never wanted credit, did you?" I smiled sadly. "If I wanted credit, I would have told everyone years ago. I only wanted the truth." She reached across the table and gently covered my hand with hers. "I think it's time everyone else heard it too." As she walked toward the door with the binder tucked beneath her arm, I had the strange feeling that the secret I'd carried for 12 long years was finally about to find its voice. And this time, it wouldn't be me telling the story.